Hello everyone and welcome back to Easy Natural English with Liam. As usual, I'll be speaking to you in English that is a little bit easier than movies and TV shows, but hopefully not as boring and unnatural as textbooks. Today, I'd like to talk to you about how to study English with your phone, or basically how to study any language with just your mobile phone or just your cell phone. If you've been listening to my channel or my podcast for a while, you'll know that I'm studying Japanese. And honestly, I do most of my study on my phone. I use my computer when I want to do some certain exercises or something. But usually, most of my study is done on my phone. So I'm going to talk a bit about how I study Japanese with my phone and how you can do the same thing with English. So every morning I wake up and I do my flashcards on my phone. Well, actually, the first thing I do is start listening to podcasts, which you can also do with your phone. So you can use Google Podcasts, or if you're on an iPhone, perhaps you want to use Apple's podcast app. There's many different podcast apps out there. And there's so many English learning podcasts. So not just my one, but there are also many others. And you can also just listen to English podcasts, that are not for people learning English, but are just for English speakers or people who can understand English. I like to use a lot in Japanese that are just like funny ones or talking about recent topics, like two people just discussing recent events. Or also, sometimes I listen to Japanese people talking about America or the UK, because those are a bit easier for me to understand. Because even though they are speaking to native Japanese speakers, so they're not making it easier, they're talking about a topic that I already understand. I already know about America and the UK, so it's a bit easier to understand. So that's something you could do with your language, with your country. If there is an English speaker making a podcast or a YouTube about your country, if you listen to that, it can be a bit easier to understand. So yeah, podcast, very useful. I wake up in the morning, put on my headphones, make coffee while listening to podcasts through my mobile phone. And then when I've made my coffee, I sit down and I do my flashcards. I like to use an app called Anki, and later I want to make a video to introduce how to use Anki, because it might be a bit confusing at the beginning. But Anki is a really good flashcard app that helps you to remember new vocabulary or new grammar. Well, it's to remember anything, but you can make your own flashcards with the kind of vocabulary or grammar that you want to remember. But I won't talk too much about Anki now, because I want to do a video later and show you guys how to use it. But there's lots of apps you can be using to help you remember vocabulary, grammar, that kind of thing. And then also just from your phone, you can use apps for streaming services. Like I use Netflix, and I really like Netflix because the subtitle options are very flexible. So I can watch things with no subtitles, or I can use the Japanese subtitles. A lot of streaming services only have subtitles in a different language. So for you guys learning English, that means if you watch an American movie or a British movie, they probably won't have English subtitles on Amazon Prime or on Hulu or some of the other streaming services. But Netflix will have English for listening and English that you can read at the same time. So Netflix is handy. And if you have the app, you can download the episodes and you can watch them later. So I used to do that a lot when I was riding the train in Tokyo. So when I was sitting on the train, I could watch Japanese TV shows, and it was a very easy way to be able to study at any time. Also, during my lunch break at work, I would get out my phone, be able to watch Netflix, eat my lunch, and be listening to Japanese at the same time. So, you see, this is one of the reasons why I think learning with your mobile phone, like setting up your mobile phone for learning, is really useful, because you always have your phone on you. You always see people on the train or walking in the street or something, always looking at their phone. Imagine if every time you looked at your phone, you were just studying a bit of English, then you can learn so much. So I always use my phone, like if I'm waiting for a bathroom, waiting for some transport, standing in line at the supermarket, anytime I have a spare moment, I take my phone out and I do something in Japanese. So, you can take out your phone, you can read the news in English. Like if you're standing in line at the supermarket, just quickly open a news site. Like I said before, I like The Guardian, but there's lots of news sites. You open it up, just start reading the news in English. Or if you have some flashcards, you can start doing those. Perhaps you even want to stand there and watch Netflix while you're queuing if it's a long queue. So there's lots of things you can do with your phone. Another thing that I do with my phone for studying Japanese is I use Google Docs. So, Google Docs is a kind of cloud. It's like an online place where you can make documents, and then wherever you open that, it will have the same document. So I have it on my phone, and I add, so if I like to read in cafes, so if I'm reading a Japanese comic or book in a cafe and I see a sentence that I want to remember with some new grammar, then I just write it onto a document, and then later when I go home, so on this Google Doc, I can open that on my computer, and then I have that where I can make my flashcards. So actually I make my flashcards on the computer and then synchronize them to my computer, to my phone. But I'll explain how to do that when I get to the video about Anki. But yeah, Google Docs, they're very handy because if you're on your computer studying, you can add things to it. And then if you're on your phone studying, you can add things to it, and it will be synchronized. You'll have the same writing on both of them. So I like Google Docs, or any other kind of cloud type of document I think is really useful to study. Much more useful than a notebook, because you might not always have your notebook in your pocket. You might think of an English question that you want to check, or you might think of, or you might see some new vocabulary or grammar. If you don't have your notebook, you can't write it down. But if you're taking notes on your phone, you can do it anywhere, because you probably always have your phone. And then one more thing that I want to say is you can use italki on your phone. And if you've been listening for a while, you'll know that I teach on italki. So you can take an online lesson with me on there. There's a link for that in the podcast description, or in the description of the YouTube videos. And you can take a lesson with me on there. So wherever you are, if you have your mobile phone and you have a bit of a quiet space, you can put on your headphones and you can talk to me through video chat, and you can have an English lesson even with your phone. I think, maybe about half of my students seem to be using their phone when we do the lessons. Personally, I like to use my laptop when I take my Japanese lessons, and I also always use my computer for teaching, because it's a bit easier if I want to take notes or something at the same time. But the mobile phone, the cell phone, seems to work perfectly fine. So yeah, if you'd like to come take a lesson with me on italki via your phone, you can do that. So yeah, like I said, I just think mobile phone is such a convenient and fast way to study. So if you get your phone ready to study, because if you're out and you think, oh, I want to study, and then you're looking for websites or something, then maybe that 10 minutes free time you had was lost just looking for a website. So, download some apps like some flashcard apps or some other English learning apps. Have italki set up. Maybe have some news websites bookmarked. Maybe have a Netflix app downloaded or another streaming service if you like. Have podcast apps installed. And also, I always try to make sure I have things downloaded so I don't even need an internet connection. I make sure to always have some podcast episodes downloaded or some Netflix episode downloaded, or some news articles downloaded, so I don't need to have internet access. So even if I go into the countryside and, maybe I go for a walk and then I take a break on a bench and there's no internet connection, I can still access those things. Or perhaps if you take a train, you might be underground and you might not have much internet connection. So it can be a good idea just to have all this stuff ready, so every free moment in the day you can get a bit more English study in there. So that's all I wanted to say about phones. As you can see, I'm a very big fan of studying with my phone. I just think turning on a computer or getting out your notebooks takes a process, but getting your phone out of your pocket takes 1 second. And if your phone becomes like a real study tool, if it's all set up and ready to go, you'll probably just find that you're studying a lot more in your day. So try to make use of your phone. I think we all have them these days and you always have it with you. So thank you all very much for listening. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, please review. Everyone share with your friends, and I will see you all back here next time.